FPL has announced a brand new scoring system this year, and I've collected all of the data from the past 5 seasons to figure out which players are going to benefit the most. Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I'll be running through the new announcement from FPL, which will detail the new scoring system, which mainly impacts certain types of players in FPL this season, but it's undoubtedly going to change the way that we pick our teams going into game week 1 and throughout the season. So a really important one today. If you enjoyed today's video, do leave a like, hit subscribe as well, and if FPL announced any other changes over the next few days, then you won't miss out on any of it because you'll already be subscribed and I'll be pushing out videos very quickly after any announcements. In the meantime, let's look at the first change that they've already announced, and it's going to change the way that we pick players, in my opinion anyway. So they've announced a new scoring system which basically benefits defensive players. So defensive actions now get contribution points in FPL. The way they're structuring this is that blocks, tackles, interceptions, and clearances are going to now count for points in FPL. In the past, it was very simple. If you were a defender, you could only really get points from clean sheets or attacking returns, or of course, bonus points. Now, there's another way that defensive-minded players can collect points, and that is through CBIT, which is clearances, blocks, interceptions, and tackles. Now, for defenders, it's just as simple as that. It's those 4 different factors that are combined, but with midfielders, they've also added in recoveries. So it's all of the aforementioned 4, as you can see here: blocks, interceptions, tackles, clearances. But with midfielders, they also get measured on recoveries as well. So the way that they're going to score this is for every 10 contributions defensively, you'll get 2 points for defenders, and for every 12 contributions defensively for midfielders, you get 2 points, and the same goes for forwards as well. Although in fairness, it's probably not going to impact forwards all that much. Now, the final important thing to mention here is that any player can only get a maximum of 2 points extra per match from this. So once you've got your 10 defensive contributions as a defender, or 12 as a midfielder or forward, you can't get any more. So it's not like you get to 20 contributions and you double those points. It will cap at 2. So it's not a game breaker, but what it will do is add a certain amount of points to players that probably weren't that relevant before. On the right-hand side, FPL also did us the favor of projecting the additional points that certain players would have gotten last season if this rule was in place. And the main beneficiaries are James Tarkowski, Caicedo, Bednarek for Southampton, who obviously otherwise would be an awful FPL pick. 40 points benefit on all of those 3 players, by the way. So that is a huge chunk of points. That's the equivalent of 10 goals for a forward. So this is a massive difference and a massive change to the FPL scoring system. After that, you've also got a lot of defenders and midfielders in there, mainly centre-backs and defensive-minded midfielders. So you've got Huijsen, Murillo, Anderson, Gomez, Gehi, Feis, and Norgard as well, who's just moved to Arsenal, all got north of 30 points benefits in the projections anyway from last season's data. So if this rule was in place, these players would have scored at least 10 goals worth in terms of those top 3, or at least 6 or 7 goals worth in terms of raw points for the rest of them here. So it does make a massive difference. But admittedly, this is very top line data. What I wanted to do is some real digging into who the main beneficiaries might be this season based on last season's data and the last 5 seasons data as well, to see if any trends emerge. So a massive thank you to Tom from Who Got the Assist, my podcast partner. Do go check out that podcast, by the way, who very quickly ran the numbers and sent them straight over to me, knowing that I wanted to make this video. So a huge thank you to him. Do go check out Who Got the Assist on all audio channels as well. In the meantime, last season, to begin with, Tarkowski does, of course, come out on top. The clearances were the main factor as to why he won out in terms of all of the defenders last year. So the CBIT total on the far right-hand side, 340 points is the best out of any defender. So he got the most extra points, or would have gotten the most extra points if this rule was in place last year. But a large factor in that was the clearances. And as you can see here on all of the top 10 defenders, a couple of trends emerge. Mostly clearances help. So if you can find a defender who makes a lot of clearances, they are going to benefit a lot more from this new point scoring system than one who might get a few more blocks than average or a few more tackles than average. As you can see here, blocks, interceptions and tackles, they do help, but they're not the main contributing factor to the point scoring. So Huijsen was top of blocks, but only with 50. And let's remember here that you don't get extra points for blocks, interceptions or tackles. They're all scored the same. So if you get one block, that adds 1 to the contributions per match. So clearances are massively helpful. If you can find a defender next season that you think will get a lot of clearances, then that is going to benefit you a lot more than one that might get slightly more than average blocks, interceptions or tackles. The other thing to note here from the top 10 is that I think every single one of these are nailed centre backs. So you won't get much benefit from the fullbacks. Obviously, they get attacking returns in different ways and will score points in different ways. But this seems to be a bit of a leveler where centre backs now are going to be all the more valuable, not just because they're nailed in for 90 minutes a match, but because they are much more likely to be the beneficiaries of this new point scoring system. All of these players are centre backs. I'm pretty sure all of them have been like absolutely nailed for minutes pretty much over the last season. There might be a few injuries here or there, but they're all very high on clearances and very high on the minutes at centre back. So looking forward to this season, that is a trend that you might want to keep an eye on. Make sure that you're picking centre backs more often than you might have done in the past, because they're going to benefit the most. So like I said, I also scraped the data from the last 5 seasons. Well, I say I did, Tom did. Thank you again to him. And these are the top 10 defenders that come out from the last 5 seasons in total. Now, Tarkowski, again, top of the rankings, nailed for minutes, centre back. He gets a ton of clearances, so he is going to be gold dust this season in comparison. I expect him to come in at a much higher price, by the way. And I also expect centre-backs to be kind of priced in with these points in mind. So all of these will probably get a bump. But over the last 5 seasons, Tarkowski, Anderson, Pinnock, Kilman, Ben Mee, who's I think just left Brentford, Gabriel, who has been FPL relevant anyway, Konza, Van Dijk, Dunk. These are some really interesting options from an FPL point of view anyway. I think most of these at certain times have been factors, but never consistently. These have always been nailed centre-backs, so when you've got like a double game week coming, you pile in on these players knowing that they're likely to play both games, but you're not really expecting that many attacking returns. This gives them that extra angle, and a player like Gabriel, who also does have a decent chance of attacking returns, could be all the more valuable this season, knowing that he gets the additional 2 points for the defensive contributions. So of this sheet, obviously, we know Tarkowski is going to be really interesting. I'm particularly interested in Anderson and Pinnock, who both have over 9 on average per game in terms of CBIT. So very high per game, very close to that 10 that they would need to get the 2 extra points on average per game. So if they're getting nailed minutes, then they're very likely to be benefiting from this new scoring system. After that, you've got Gabriel, you've got Konza, Van Dijk, Dunk, all good from set pieces, all pretty nailed for minutes. Konza, who previously was a 4.5 million defender, probably gets a bump. Van Dijk could even be up at 7 million if these points are kind of factored in. But what this tells me is, again, centre-backs are going to be super crucial. And if you can find a centre-back who gets attacking threat as well, like a Gabriel, like a Van Dijk, they could be absolute gold dust. So I've also ran the numbers for midfielders, and another interesting but slightly different trend occurs here. You've got defensive midfielders. I don't think there's too much of a surprise there in terms of, yeah, they're the ones that have the most defensive actions in a game and will benefit from this point scoring system the most. But rather than clearances being the thing that you want to look out for, it's more ball recoveries. So that's the additional factor that's measured in for midfielders that are on the CBITR. And recoveries for midfielders are much, much higher than anything else that they're measured on. So clearances, you saw in the previous with defenders, that was their highest. This is down at 40 to 50 at absolute most. Blocks, very low. Interceptions, about the same. And tackles, a little bit higher. You've got Gahey, you've got Gravenberch, you've got Caicedo. Players who get a lot of tackles per game, but you're still looking at 3 to 4 a game at absolute most there. Recoveries are much, much higher. So again, if you can find a midfielder who gets a lot of ball recoveries, he's probably going to be pretty decent on the CBITR total and therefore will benefit more. Now, there are a few options here from last season that might be particularly interesting because they're also not bad when it comes to attacking returns. Now, looking down the spreadsheet here, Anderson at Nottingham Forest, not terrible, got forward a fair bit, also very good on this new ranking. You've also got McAllister towards the bottom of this, but remember, this is the top 10 anyway, so he's still ranking very highly. 408 CBITR points over the total season. So that obviously doesn't account for the projected points fantasy wise, but if we're measuring that across a 38 game week season, you're looking at about an average of 10 a game, which would get him those 2 extra points. And he also gets a fair amount of attacking returns as well. So he could be really interesting. The same goes for Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle, who isn't the worst FPL option anyway. He, at times, has been interesting. But with this, he will also benefit with an average of about 10 per game if it's over a 38 game week season on the CBITR. Obviously 405 divided by 38, just over 10. So that's how I've worked that out. But yeah, so you've got some really interesting players here who otherwise might not be that interesting, but are going to become factors. Let's take a quick look at the past 5 seasons and see if any other players kind of become more interesting. And the simple answer, of course, otherwise I probably wouldn't have included it, is yes, other players do become interesting. And I wanted to show this graphic in particular because of 1 or 2 players especially. Those 2 are right at the top. You've got Declan Rice and you've got Rodri. Now, Declan Rice has taken up a slightly different role at Arsenal, so isn't making quite as many defensive contributions, but his average over the past 5 seasons is running at almost 15 a game, which is incredibly high. And if he plays in that 8 for Arsenal, which he looks like he will do on the left-hand side, this might come down as an average a little bit, but I still think he's going to rank pretty highly when it comes to the average CBITR per game across the season. He's still making defensive contributions. He's still getting ball recoveries every now and then. And again, he's so nailed for minutes that he will probably rack up quite a few of these across the season. So he'll become a factor. The same goes for Rodri, who I really wanted to make this graphic in particular for because last season he got injured and therefore wasn't a factor. However, he's also running at an incredibly high rate on the CBITR at over 15, almost 16 per game. Only one player here beats it, and that is Paulinho, who's no longer in the league. So he's going to be a very interesting FPL option this year if he can stay fit. He usually does get 90 minutes a game. And if you look at the past 5 seasons, even though he missed almost a whole season, he's still running Declan Rice pretty close at the top. So he's going to be really interesting as well as we move into this season, now that he's back fit and will probably start getting games again for Man City. You've also got other players. You've got Gallagher, no longer in the league. Ward-Prowse, Norgard maybe at Arsenal if he gets minutes, might not be a bad option. And Guimaraes and Tielemans as well might be players that you might want to look at moving forwards. Now, there's a lot to comb through in terms of the data, and I'm sure other videos will be made. I'll talk about it in future videos as well once I dig into the data a little bit more. But this does change the FPL landscape, and I'm interested to see whether or not you think that this is a positive change for FPL, or whether you think that it's just going to add needless complication and it's going to maybe be a bit more of an annoyance than anything else. Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's video, leave a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time as we start getting ready for the start of the FPL season.